The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor 2 inches from my feet. I didn't flinch. I'd learned not to flinch around my stepsister anymore. Not when she threw tantrums, not when she forged documents, and definitely not when she decided to destroy me in front of 200 wedding guests wearing designer gowns and judgment. "You have some nerve showing your face here," Scarlett Corleone hissed, her perfect red lips curling into a sneer that would have made our late father sick. But our father was dead. And that was precisely why I was standing in the gilded ballroom of the Rosewood estate, uninvited, underdressed, and about to commit social suicide. My hands trembled as I clutched the worn leather journal. The only thing I had left of my father. Everything else. Gone. The house where I grew up. The company he built from nothing. The bank accounts, the cars, the safety I'd taken for granted for 26 years. All of it now belonged to the woman glaring at me like I was gum on her Louboutin heel. I just wanted to. I started, but my voice cracked. Wanted to what? Scarlett stepped closer, her white Vera Wang gown rustling like a threat. Ruin my wedding day? Make a scene? Beg for scraps? The whispers started then. I could feel 200 pairs of eyes burning into my back, dissecting my department store dress, my scuffed shoes, the desperation I wore like cheap perfume. Hey there, beautiful souls. I know you're probably wondering how I ended up here. At my own humiliation, watching my world burn in real time. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. You're going to want to follow this story to the end. Trust me, what happens next? You won't see it coming. Scarlett, please. I hated the begging in my voice, but pride was a luxury I could no longer afford. Dad would have wanted. Dad! She laughed, sharp and cruel. Dad left everything to me. No will, Isabella. No will means the courts decided. And they decided you get nothing. That's not true. He told me. He told you what? That he loved you. Scarlett's eyes glittered with something dark and victorious. Love doesn't pay bills, sweetheart. And it certainly doesn't override the law. I wanted to scream that she was lying. That our father had promised me I'd always be taken care of. That the company, Hart Industries, was supposed to be mine too, not just hers. But the words died in my throat because what was the point? She'd already won. She'd hired lawyers I couldn't afford. Presented documents I'd never seen. Convinced a judge that I was merely the daughter of her father's first wife, while she was the precious child of his true love. His second wife, the woman who'd slithered into our lives when I was 15 and proceeded to poison everything beautiful between my father and me. Security. Scarlett's voice rang out across the ballroom. Escort this woman out. Now. 2 men in black suits materialized beside me. I'd known this would happen. I'd known coming here was foolish, masochistic even. But I'd needed to try one last time. Needed to look my stepsister in her cold, calculating eyes and see if there was any humanity left. There wasn't. Don't touch me, I said quietly, shrugging off the security guard's hand. I can walk. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as I turned toward the exit. Some faces showed pity. Most showed relief that the uncomfortable moment was ending. A few showed the kind of sick fascination people get watching a car crash in slow motion. I was halfway to the door when Scarlett's voice rang out again. Oh, and Isabella? She paused for maximum effect. That fiancé of yours? Ethan. He called yesterday. Said to tell you he's sorry, but he can't marry a woman with nothing to her name. I guess love does have its limits after all. The ballroom tilted. No, that couldn't be true. Ethan loved me. We'd been together for 3 years. He'd proposed 6 months ago with a simple ring and a promise that we'd build our life together. That my father's money didn't matter, that I mattered. But as I stared at Scarlett's triumphant face, I realized she was telling the truth. Ethan hadn't returned my calls in 3 days. 3 days since my father's estate had been officially transferred to Scarlett's name. I wanted to disappear. To melt into the expensive carpet and cease existing. Instead, I lifted my chin and walked toward those massive oak doors, each step an act of sheer will. I was almost there when I heard it, a sound that didn't belong. Low at first, then growing louder. A mechanical roar that rattled the crystal chandeliers and silenced every conversation in the room. Someone screamed as the French doors to the garden burst open, blown inward by a wind that smelled like jet fuel and impossibly expensive cologne. I turned, along with everyone else, toward the doorway where sunlight streamed in like a spotlight on a stage. And that's when I saw him. Tall, dark-haired, moving through that doorway with the kind of confidence that made the security guard step back instinctively. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my father's first car, and his eyes, those impossible green eyes, locked onto mine with an intensity that made my knees weak. "Ethan," I whispered, but this wasn't the Ethan I knew. Not the sweet, humble man who'd worked 2 jobs and brought me wildflowers because roses were too expensive. This Ethan had an edge, a presence, a power that seemed to bend the very air around him. "Sorry I'm late, sweetheart," he said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. Then he smiled, predatory, protective, and absolutely terrifying to everyone but me. Did I miss anything important? Behind him, through those open doors, I could see it, a private jet. Sleek, black, and massive, sitting on what used to be Scarlett's perfectly manicured lawn. So, what do you think happens next? Drop your predictions in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. This story is about to get wild. The last time I had seen Ethan Blake, he was kissing me goodbye at the door of my father's hospital room, promising he'd be back with coffee and something that resembled actual food. That was 4 days before my father died. 4 days before my world imploded. Now he was standing in my stepsister's ballroom like he owned it. And from the way every security guard had frozen in place, maybe he did. Isabella. My name on his lips sounded different. Richer. Like he'd been holding back every other time he'd said it, diluting it so I wouldn't taste the power underneath. "Come here." I couldn't move. My legs had turned to concrete, my brain struggling to reconcile the man I'd loved with the stranger who'd just landed a jet on my stepsister's lawn. I said, "Come here." Not a request this time. A command wrapped in velvet. My feet obeyed before my mind caught up, carrying me across that ballroom floor while 200 guests watched in stunned silence. Each step felt surreal, like I was walking through someone else's life, someone else's disaster. Ethan met me halfway. His hand found mine, warm, familiar, but somehow different. Stronger. When had his hands become so confident? "Who the hell are you?" Scarlett's voice cracked through the silence like a whip. She'd recovered from her shock, her face flushed with rage and something else. Fear, maybe? "Security. I want this man arrested for trespassing and property damage." Nobody moved. Ethan's smile widened. "You must be the infamous Scarlett Corleone." He said her name like it was something distasteful he'd found on his shoe. "I've heard so much about you. None of it good. I don't know who you think you are." "Ethan Blake." He said it simply, like the name should mean something. It didn't. Not to me, anyway. But apparently it meant something to everyone else. I watched the color drain from Scarlett's face. Watched her new husband. What was his name? Thomas. Timothy. Grip her arm and lean in to whisper something urgent. Watched the guests pull out their phones, fingers flying across screens. "Impossible," Scarlett breathed. "The Blake family doesn't. You can't be." "Can't be what?" Ethan's voice was pleasant, conversational even, but I could feel the tension radiating off him like heat. "Can't be engaged to Isabella Hart? Because I assure you I am. Can't be standing in your ballroom uninvited? Well, technically the airspace above your property is public domain up to a certain altitude, and I did land on the lawn, not inside the actual venue, so." "You destroyed my garden," Scarlett shrieked. "I'll have my people write you a check." He turned to me then, those green eyes softening in a way that made my chest ache. "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. I was in Tokyo when I got your messages. Flew back as fast as I could." "Your messages?" I repeated stupidly. "Ethan, I don't understand. What's happening? Who are you?" Something flickered across his face. "Guilt. Regret. We should talk. Privately." "No." I pulled my hand from his, suddenly angry. Angry at Scarlett, angry at my father for dying without a will, angry at the universe for this cosmic joke of a day, but mostly angry at Ethan for looking at me like I should understand what was happening when I very clearly did not. "You don't get to show up in a private jet and act like that's normal. You worked at a bookstore, Ethan. You drove a 15-year-old Honda. You lived in a studio apartment with water stains on the ceiling." "I know," he said quietly. "So explain. Right now. In front of everyone." I gestured wildly at our audience, who were watching this drama unfold like it was better than the wedding entertainment they'd paid for. "Who are you really?" Ethan's jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Then he sighed, running a hand through his dark hair in that gesture I'd always found endearing. Now it just made him look exhausted. "My name is Ethan Blake." That part's true. I'm the CEO of Blake Enterprises. We own hotels, tech companies, real estate across 3 continents. My family is worth approximately $4.2 billion, give or take a few hundred million depending on the stock market. The ballroom erupted in whispers. I stood there, mouth open, trying to process words that made no sense. That's not funny. I'm not joking, Isabella. You worked at Riverside Books. You rang up my purchases. You recommended mystery novels and made minimum wage. I did work there, he interrupted gently. For 6 months. It's what I do sometimes, when I need to escape the family business. I go somewhere nobody knows my name and I just exist. No expectations. No board meetings. No photographers following my every move. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. And then I met you. I remembered that day. I'd been looking for a first edition of my father's favorite Hemingway novel, a birthday present. Ethan had helped me search for 45 minutes, then special ordered it when we couldn't find it in the store. He'd refused to let me pay the rush shipping fee. You lied to me, I whispered. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing. Is it? His eyes searched mine. You never asked what I did before the bookstore. Never asked about my family or my bank account. You just asked about my favorite books and whether I preferred coffee or tea and if I wanted to get dinner sometime. You saw me, Isabella. Not my last name or my net worth. Just me. That's not fair. Fair. Scarlett's voice rang out, sharp and brittle. You want to talk about fair? You show up at my wedding, make a scene, and now you're telling us you've been secretly engaged to a billionaire this whole time. He's not a billionaire. I shot back automatically. He said 4.2 billion. That makes him. I stopped, the math finally hitting me. Oh my God. Ethan had the grace to look sheepish. This is insane, I breathed. This is absolutely insane. 4 days ago, you told me you'd have to save for another year before we could afford a wedding. You said we'd honeymoon in Florida because you couldn't take time off work. I panicked, he admitted. After your father died, I was going to tell you everything. I swear I was. But then you were grieving and everything with Scarlett happened so fast. Don't you dare say her name like she's the victim here. I was shouting now, months of suppressed anger finally erupting. She stole everything from me. My home, my father's company, my entire life. And you. I jabbed a finger into his chest. You let me cry on your shoulder about not being able to afford a lawyer. You held me while I sobbed about having to move into a 1-bedroom apartment in the worst part of town. You watched me break, Ethan. And you said nothing. The guilt on his face was answer enough. Get out, I said coldly. Isabella, both of you, get out of my sight. I turned to Scarlett, who was watching this implosion with barely concealed glee. You got what you wanted. The company, the house, the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. Congratulations. I turned toward the exit. The same doors I'd been heading for before Ethan's dramatic entrance, determined to salvage what little dignity I had left. There's one more thing you should know, Ethan called after me. I stopped but didn't turn around. Unless you're about to tell me this is all a nightmare and I'm about to wake up, I don't want to hear it. Hart Industries, he said quietly. Your father's company. Scarlett doesn't actually own it. The ballroom went silent. I turned slowly. What? Ethan's expression was unreadable. There was a will, Isabella. Your father did make one. It was filed with his attorney 3 weeks before he died. He paused, letting that sink in. And according to that will, you inherit everything. What do you think Scarlett did? Drop your theories in the comments. And if you're hooked on this story, smash that subscribe button. The plot is about to twist. The world tilted sideways. A will. There was a will. You're lying, Scarlett said, but her voice had gone thin, reedy. The voice of someone who knew the ground beneath them was crumbling. Am I? Ethan pulled out his phone with the casual confidence of a man who held all the cards. Richard Hart filed his last will and testament with Morrison and Associates on March 15th, 3 weeks before his death. He left explicit instructions that his estate, including Hart Industries, the family home, and all financial assets, be divided as follows. 70% to his daughter Isabella Hart, 30% to be held in trust for any future grandchildren. That's impossible, Scarlett hissed. I had lawyers go through everything. There was no will. There was no will filed with the probate court, Ethan corrected smoothly, because someone made sure it never got there. Someone who had access to your father's office in the days after his death. Someone who knew exactly which documents to destroy. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My father had left me everything? But how? Why hadn't anyone told me? You have no proof, Scarlett said, but she'd gone pale under her expensive makeup. Actually, I have the original. Your father gave a copy to his attorney and another to someone he trusted completely. Ethan's smile was razor-sharp. Me. The ballroom exploded. Guests talking over each other, phones out, recording everything. Scarlett's new husband. I finally remembered his name was Theodore Winchester. Grabbed her arm, whispering urgently. She shook him off, her eyes wild. This is a setup, she spat. You're trying to ruin my wedding, my life. No, Scarlett. You did that yourself when you committed fraud. Ethan's voice could have frozen fire. When you destroyed a legal document and lied to the courts about its existence. That's not just civil fraud. That's criminal. I found my voice finally, though it came out strangled. How long have you known? Ethan's gaze shifted to me, softening. Your father came to see me 2 months before he died. He'd been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Didn't want you to know because he didn't want you to spend his last months crying at his bedside. He knew about us. Had known for a while, actually. He had me investigated. Of course he did. My father had been many things. Loving, brilliant, overprotective to the point of suffocation sometimes. What did he want? To make sure you'd be taken care of. He knew Scarlett would try something after he died. She'd been pushing him to sign over power of attorney, to make her co-owner of Hart Industries. He refused, and that made him suspicious. Ethan stepped closer, his voice dropping so only I could hear. He asked me to watch over you, to make sure his will was executed properly, to protect you from whatever Scarlett had planned. So all of this, us, it was an assignment. The words tasted like acid. My father paid you to date me? No. The word came out sharp, almost angry. God, no, Isabella. I fell in love with you before your father ever contacted me. Why do you think he had me investigated in the first place? He wanted to know who his daughter was spending all her time with. But you never told me. I wanted to. Do you have any idea how many times I almost came clean? But your father made me promise to wait until after he died. He wanted you to have time to grieve without worrying about legal battles and family drama. He thought he had more time. We both did. If your heart is racing right now, hit that like button, because mine was about to explode out of my chest. I looked at Scarlett, who was backing toward the exit, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a white flag of surrender. You knew. You knew there was a will, and you destroyed it. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I was moving toward her now, powered by 3 months of rage and grief and humiliation. You went into Dad's office after he died. I remember, because you said you were looking for insurance paperwork. But you weren't, were you? You were looking for the will. This is slander, Scarlett said shrilly. Theodore, call our lawyer. Now. But Theodore was staring at his new wife like he'd never seen her before. Like he was realizing he'd just legally bound himself to a woman who might be going to prison. I have security footage, Ethan said casually, scrolling through his phone. From your father's office building. Shows Scarlett entering Richard Hart's private office at 11:47 p.m. on the night of his death. She was there for 43 minutes. Left carrying a briefcase that she didn't have when she went in. You had cameras in my father's office? I turned on Ethan, not sure whether to be grateful or furious. Your father had cameras in his office. He was paranoid about corporate espionage. I just had the footage pulled after Scarlett filed her fraudulent claim. He met my eyes. I've been building a case for 3 months, Isabella, waiting for the right moment to expose her. And you thought my humiliation at her wedding was the right moment. I thought your strength at her wedding was the perfect moment, he corrected quietly. You came here knowing what would happen, knowing she'd try to destroy you in front of everyone. You came anyway because you wanted to honor your father's memory. Consequences be damned. That took courage, Isabella. The kind of courage you'll need to run Hart Industries when this is all over. Run Hart Industries? I couldn't even run my own life right now. Scarlett lunged suddenly, not at Ethan or me, but at a side door near the champagne fountain. She moved fast for someone in a wedding gown, but Ethan was faster. He nodded once, and 2 men I hadn't noticed before. They'd been standing near the exits, blending in with the other guests, moved to block her path. Scarlett Corleone. One of them said, pulling out a badge. FBI. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and destruction of legal documents. The ballroom erupted again. Someone screamed. Theodore fainted, actually fainted, hitting the floor in a heap of expensive suit fabric. Scarlett's mother appeared from somewhere, shrieking about lawsuits and family honor. And me. I just stood there, watching my stepsister get handcuffed in her wedding dress, and felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just a vast, empty tiredness. Isabella. Ethan's hand found my shoulder. I need you to listen carefully. Hart Industries has been operating under Scarlett's control for 3 months. In that time, she's made some very questionable decisions. Sold off assets, fired key personnel, entered into contracts that benefit her personally. The company is in trouble. How much trouble? The kind that requires immediate intervention or it goes under in 6 months. I laughed, a hollow, broken sound. So I inherit a dying company, a house full of memories I can't afford to maintain, and a fiancé who lied to me for 3 years. Congratulations to me. I never lied to you, Ethan said firmly. I just didn't tell you I was rich. Everything else, every conversation, every date, every time I said I loved you, that was real, Isabella. That was me. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just Ethan, the man who loves you more than anything in this world. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to so badly it hurt. But trust, once shattered, doesn't just glue itself back together. I need time, I whispered. I know. He stepped back, giving me space even though I could see it killed him to do it. Take all the time you need. But first, let me take you away from here. You don't need to watch this circus any longer. He gestured toward the exit, where his security team was efficiently clearing a path through the gawking guests. Outside, through those blown-open French doors, I could still see the jet sitting on Scarlett's ruined lawn. Where would we go? Anywhere you want. Paris. Tokyo. A private island where nobody can bother you for a week. His voice softened. Or just your apartment. I can have my driver take you home, and you never have to see me again if that's what you want. What would you do? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're invested in Isabella's journey, make sure you're subscribed. This story is far from over. I looked at the wreckage around me. Scarlett being led away in handcuffs, her mother following behind screaming at the FBI agents, Theodore being revived by concerned guests, 200 people with their phones out documenting every second of this disaster. Then I looked at Ethan. Really looked at him. At the man who'd held me while I cried, who'd brought me soup when I had the flu, who'd proposed with a simple ring and a promise of forever. The same man who'd kept secrets, who'd let me suffer when he could have ended it at any time. But also the man who'd honored my father's dying wish, who'd built a case to protect me, who'd literally landed a jet on my enemy's lawn to save me from my darkest moment. Take me home, I said finally. But Ethan, we're not okay. Not yet. I know, he said quietly. But we will be. I promise you, Isabella. We will be. As his security team escorted us out of the ballroom, I caught one last glimpse of Scarlett's face. She was staring at me with pure, undiluted hatred. And I realized with a chill that this wasn't over. Not even close. The jet's interior looked like something from a movie I couldn't afford to watch. Cream leather seats, polished wood accents. A fully stocked bar that probably cost more than my annual salary used to be. I sat rigidly in one of those absurdly comfortable chairs, staring out the window as we lifted off from Scarlett's destroyed lawn. Below, I could see the chaos we'd left behind. Police cars, news vans already arriving, guests spilling onto the lawn with their phones raised like offerings to the god of viral content. Scarlett's wedding, her perfect, meticulously planned wedding, reduced to a crime scene. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. Can I get you anything? Ethan asked from the seat across from me. He'd kept his distance since we boarded, respecting the invisible wall I'd built between us. Water? Wine? The pilot says we'll be landing in about 20 minutes. 20 minutes? I frowned. My apartment is an hour from here. More with traffic. We're not going to your apartment. Something flickered across his face. I took you home. Your real home. My stomach dropped. The house. Ethan, I can't go back there. Scarlett's been living there for 3 months. Not anymore. He pulled out his phone, tapped something, and handed it to me. The screen showed a legal document. Dense paragraphs of legalese that I couldn't fully process, but the header was clear enough. Emergency injunction, property seizure. As of 45 minutes ago, all of your father's assets have been frozen pending criminal investigation. That includes the house. Scarlett was escorted off the property by federal agents approximately. He checked his watch. 10 minutes ago. Your house is empty. Clean. Waiting for you. I handed the phone back, not trusting myself to speak. My house. After 3 months of picturing Scarlett in my father's study, sleeping in my childhood bedroom, erasing every trace of me, it was mine again. There's more, Ethan continued quietly. The will is being fast-tracked through probate. Given the criminal charges and the evidence of fraud, the judge has agreed to expedited processing. You'll have full legal control of Hart Industries within 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I laughed, the sound brittle even to my own ears. 2 weeks to figure out how to run a company I know nothing about. 2 weeks to undo 3 months of Scarlett's sabotage. Should be a piece of cake. You won't be alone. He leaned forward, forearms on his knees. I've already assembled a team. Forensic accountants to track what Scarlett stole, corporate attorneys to void the contracts she signed, a crisis management firm to handle the media storm that's about to hit. Stop. I held up a hand. Just stop, Ethan. You're doing it again. Doing what? Taking control. Making decisions for me. Planning my life without asking what I want. I met his eyes. I appreciate the help. I do. But I need you to understand something. For 3 months, I've had zero control over my own existence. Scarlett controlled where I lived, what I could afford, whether I ate that day or not. And now you're. I'm trying to fix it, he said roughly. I'm trying to give you back everything she took. But I didn't ask you to. The words burst out of me, months of frustration finally finding a target. You're making me feel helpless all over again, Ethan. Like I can't handle my own problems. Like I need a billionaire boyfriend to swoop in and save me. Fiancé, he corrected quietly. What? Billionaire fiancé. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. Not the simple one he'd used 3 years ago when he proposed in my father's garden. This one was velvet, expensive, the kind of box that made my heart race for all the wrong reasons. He opened it. The ring inside caught the cabin light and fractured it into 1,000 tiny rainbows. A massive diamond surrounded by smaller stones, set in platinum, that probably cost more than my college tuition. If you're thinking what I was thinking, oh hell no. Drop a comment below. Because this was not the moment for grand gestures. This is my grandmother's ring, Ethan said. She gave it to me before she died, made me promise I'd only give it to someone I loved more than my own life. His voice went rough. I was going to give you the simple ring. Thought it's what you'd want. Thought you'd run if you knew the truth about my family. But Isabella. He looked up at me, and the raw emotion in his eyes nearly broke me. I love you. Not because your father asked me to protect you. Not because you need saving. But because you're the first person who ever saw me as just me. Ethan, let me finish. He closed the box, held it between us like an offering and a confession. I was a coward. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. Should have trusted that you'd love me anyway. But I was scared. Scared that you'd look at me differently. That you'd see the money and the power and the family name, and forget about the guy who recommended mysteries at a bookstore. That's not fair, I whispered. I know. Nothing about this is fair. But I'm asking, begging, for a chance to make it right. To be the partner you need, not the savior you don't want. He set the box on the table between us. I'm not asking you to put this ring on. Not yet. I'm just asking you not to give up on us. The jet shuddered slightly as we began our descent. Through the window, I could see it. The Hart family estate sprawling across 30 acres of perfectly manicured grounds. The house where I'd grown up, where my father had taught me to ride a bike, where my mother had died when I was 7. Home. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. How to trust you again. How to run a company. How to be the person my father apparently thought I could be. Then we figure it out together. Ethan's hand moved across the table, palm up. An invitation, not a demand. 1 day at a time. 1 decision at a time. And if you decide you don't want me in your life anymore, if you decide the lies are too much, I'll respect that. But I'll still make sure you have everything you need to succeed. I stared at his hand for a long moment. Strong fingers that had held me through the worst months of my life. Hands that had lied by omission for 3 years. Hands that had also built a case to save me when I had nothing left. Slowly, I reached out and took it. His fingers closed around mine, warm and solid, and I felt some of the ice around my heart crack just a little. 1 day at a time, I repeated. But Ethan, if you lie to me again about anything, we're done. I don't care if it's to protect me or spare my feelings, or because you think you know what's best. No more secrets. No more secrets, he agreed. I promise. The jet touched down on the private airstrip behind my estate. As we taxied to a stop, I saw them. A line of black SUVs parked near the main house. People in dark suits moving with purpose. Who are they? I asked. Ethan grimaced. Your security team. My what? Isabella, you just became a very wealthy woman. You're also the key witness in a federal fraud case against someone who has already proven she's willing to break the law. You need protection. I wanted to argue. Wanted to say I didn't need bodyguards and security teams and whatever else came with being suddenly, impossibly rich. But he was right. Scarlett had looked at me with murder in her eyes as she was being arrested. And people like Scarlett, people who'd spent their lives manipulating and scheming, didn't just accept defeat. They planned revenge. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Drop your thoughts below and make sure you're subscribed. Because Scarlett isn't done with Isabella yet. Fine, I said. Security team. But they stay outside the house. I need some spaces that are just mine. Deal. Ethan stood, offered me his hand again. Ready to go home? I looked out at the house. At the rose garden my mother had planted. At the east wing where my father's study waited. Probably full of memories I wasn't ready to face. At the life I'd lost and somehow, impossibly gotten back. No, I said honestly. But let's do it anyway. We descended the jet stairs into the golden evening light. The head of security, a severe woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression, approached immediately. Ms. Hart, she said crisply. I'm Diana Friedman, head of your security detail. We've swept the property. It's secure. There was some damage to your father's study. It appears Ms. Corleone removed several items before she was escorted off the premises. Of course she did. Show me, I said. Diana led us through the familiar halls of my childhood home. Everything looked the same but felt different, like walking through a museum of my own life. We passed the living room where my father used to read the newspaper every Sunday. The kitchen where our housekeeper Mrs. Chun had taught me to make dumplings. The grand staircase where I'd posed for prom photos. But when we reached my father's study, I stopped cold in the doorway. The room had been ransacked. Drawers hung open, papers scattered across the floor. The family photos that had lined the walls were gone, leaving pale rectangles on the wallpaper. Even the leather chair, my father's favorite, worn smooth by years of use, had been slashed, white stuffing spilling out like guts. Jesus, Ethan breathed behind me. I walked into the room slowly, pieces of my father's life crunching under my feet. This wasn't just theft. This was rage. Hatred. Scarlett's final middle finger to the man who'd refused to choose her over me. Something glinted in the corner of my eye. I bent down and picked it up. A framed photo, the glass cracked but the image intact. My father and me at my college graduation, his arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning at the camera. The only photo Scarlett hadn't destroyed. Because it was face down under his desk, hidden from her rampage. I clutched it to my chest and finally, let myself cry. Not for the company or the house or the money, but for my father. For the man who'd loved me enough to protect me even after death. Who'd trusted a stranger to watch over his daughter. Who'd built an empire and left it to me because he believed I could carry it forward. Ethan's arms came around me, and I let him hold me while I sobbed into his chest. Let him be strong while I fell apart. Let him whisper promises and assurances that I half believed and half needed to be lies. Because the truth was terrifying. I was about to inherit everything, and I had absolutely no idea what to do with it. I woke up in my childhood bedroom to the smell of coffee and the sound of voices arguing downstairs. For one blissful moment, I thought I'd dreamed it all. Thought I'd wake up to find my father alive. Scarlett just a bad memory. My life still small and manageable in mine. Then I saw the ring box on my nightstand. Ethan's grandmother's ring, still unopened, and reality crashed back in. I'd fallen asleep in my clothes after crying for what felt like hours. Ethan had eventually guided me upstairs, promised to stay in one of the guest rooms, and left me alone with my grief. The security team had settled into their positions around the property, and I'd collapsed onto my bed, exhausted by emotions I didn't know how to process. Now it was morning, and apparently, my new life came with people arguing in my kitchen. I splashed water on my face, ran my fingers through my tangled hair, and headed downstairs in yesterday's wrinkled dress and bare feet. If I was going to face whatever chaos awaited me, I might as well do it looking exactly as broken as I felt. The arguing got louder as I approached the kitchen. Absolutely not. She needs time to process. Time is a luxury she doesn't have. Hart Industries is hemorrhaging money. Then maybe Hart Industries needs to wait. She just found out her entire life was a lie. My life wasn't a lie. 3 heads snapped toward me as I entered the kitchen. Ethan stood by the coffee maker, looking rumpled and tired in yesterday's suit. Diana Friedman, my head of security, sat at the kitchen island with a laptop open in front of her. And the third person, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and the most intimidating pantsuit I'd ever seen, studied me with sharp, assessing eyes. "Ms. Hart," the woman said, standing. "I'm Victoria Lawrence. I was your father's CFO at Hart Industries. I resigned 3 days after Scarlett took control because I refused to be party to her systematic destruction of everything your father built." She paused. "I'm here to help you save it. If you'll let me." I poured myself coffee with shaking hands. "How bad is it?" "Bad." Victoria opened a folder on the counter, spreading out financial documents. "In 3 months, Scarlett has sold off 2 profitable subsidiaries for a fraction of their worth, to companies owned by shell corporations that I suspect she controls. She's fired 80% of the senior leadership team and replaced them with people who have no experience in our industry. She's entered into contracts that lock us into unfavorable terms for the next 5 years. And she's been systematically draining the liquid assets into offshore accounts." "How much?" My voice came out steady, which was a minor miracle. "Approximately $47 million. The coffee cup nearly slipped from my fingers. $47 million? Give or take a few thousand. Victoria's expression was grim. "The good news is that the federal investigation will freeze those accounts and hopefully recover most of it. The bad news is that Hart Industries is currently operating at a loss. Your stock price has dropped 38%, and your board of directors is planning a vote of no confidence in your leadership. I haven't even taken leadership yet. They don't care. To them, you're Richard Hart's daughter who's been living in a 1-bedroom apartment working as a," she glanced at her notes, "freelance graphic designer. No business experience. No board experience. No reason to believe you can salvage this disaster. If you're feeling overwhelmed on my behalf, leave a comment below. Because I was about 3 seconds from running back to that 1-bedroom apartment and hiding under the covers. So what do I do?" I looked at Ethan, then Victoria, then Diana, who'd been watching this exchange with the intensity of someone cataloging threats. How do I convince them I can do this when I'm not even sure I can? "You learn fast," Victoria said. "I've cleared my schedule for the next month. I'll teach you everything I can about Hart Industries. The business model, the key players, the revenue streams, the threats. You'll work 18-hour days. You'll barely sleep. You'll want to quit approximately 70 times. And at the end of it, you'll walk into that boardroom and show them exactly who Richard Hart's daughter really is." The certainty in her voice should have been comforting. Instead, it was terrifying. "And if I fail? Then Hart Industries gets absorbed by one of our competitors. 2,000 people lose their jobs, and everything your father spent 40 years building disappears." Victoria's expression softened slightly. "No pressure." I laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "Right. No pressure at all." Ethan moved to my side, his presence solid and grounding. "You don't have to decide right now. Take a day. Process everything that's happened." "I don't have a day." I looked at Victoria. "Do I?" "The board meeting is in 72 hours. If you want any chance of keeping control, you need to be ready." She paused. "But Ethan's right. This is your choice, Isabella. No one can force you to take this on. You could sell the company, take the money, and walk away. Live the life you want without the weight of your father's legacy on your shoulders. The life I want. What did I even want anymore? 3 months ago, I'd wanted my father alive and healthy. Wanted to marry Ethan in a simple ceremony and build a quiet life together. Wanted to design logos and websites and maybe adopt a dog. Now I stood in my family home, wearing yesterday's clothes, staring at financial documents that proved my stepsister was a criminal, while my secretly billionaire fiancé and my father's former CFO waited for me to decide the fate of 2,000 employees. "Tell me about the board," I said finally. "Who wants me gone?" Victoria smiled, the first genuine expression I'd seen from her. Now you're asking the right questions. She pulled out another document. Your board of directors consists of 9 members. 3 were loyal to your father and will support you by default. 2 are opportunists who'll support whoever they think will make them the most money. And 4, her expression darkened, are in Scarlett's pocket. How is that possible? She only had control for 3 months. Your stepsister is many things, but stupid isn't one of them. She's been cultivating relationships with certain board members for over a year, offering them lucrative side deals, promising them positions in the new heart industries she was planning to build. Victoria's finger tapped one name in particular. Especially him. I read the name, James Sullivan. Your father's business partner, Victoria explained. They founded Hart Industries together 30 years ago. Your father bought him out 15 years ago after a disagreement about the company's direction. But James retained his board seat per their original agreement. He's been bitter ever since. Scarlett promised him controlling interest if he helped her consolidate power. So he knew, I breathed. He knew about the will being destroyed. He's been complicit this whole time. We can't prove that yet. But yes, I believe he knew. Victoria closed the folder. James will be your biggest problem in that boardroom. He's respected, connected, and motivated. He wants Hart Industries for himself, and he sees you as the only obstacle standing in his way. My phone buzzed. I'd left it charging overnight, and now it lit up with notification after notification. News alerts, mostly. I picked it up and felt my stomach drop. Breaking. Billionaire's secret fiancé inherits fortune after dramatic wedding arrest. Hart Industries heiress reclaims stolen empire. Scarlett Corleone faces federal charges. The wedding day scandal that shocked high society. And the photos. God, the photos. Me in my cheap dress, face tear-stained, standing next to Ethan in his expensive suit. Scarlett in handcuffs, her wedding dress trailing on the ground. The jet on her lawn. Every humiliating, devastating, dramatic moment captured in high definition and shared across every news outlet and social media platform. I'm viral, I said numbly. Diana looked up from her laptop. Trending on 4 different platforms. The video of the arrest has been viewed 18 million times. 18 million people watched the worst day of my life. Actually, Diana said, they watched you stand up to someone who tried to destroy you. They watched you reclaim what was yours. The comments are overwhelmingly supportive. You're being called everything from brave to iconic to, she paused. The badass heiress we all need in our lives. I didn't feel badass. I felt exposed. Raw. Like someone had peeled back my skin and put my pain on display for the world's entertainment. Ethan's hand found mine under the counter. We can shut it down. Issue a statement asking for privacy. Diana's team can handle the press. No. The word surprised me as much as it seemed to surprise everyone else. If 18 million people watch me almost break, they can watch me rebuild. Let them see what happens next. And if you're one of those 18 million, or if you just discovered this story, make sure you subscribe. Because what I'm about to show that board of directors is going to be legendary. Victoria's smile widened. Now you're thinking like a CEO. Don't get ahead of yourself. I haven't agreed to anything yet. But even as I said it, I could feel something shifting inside me. A spark of something that might have been anger or determination, or just sheer stubborn refusal to let Scarlett win. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from a number I didn't recognize. You think you've won. You haven't even seen what I'm capable of. This is far from over, little sister. S. The blood drained from my face. Ethan. He read the message over my shoulder, his expression going dark. Diana, trace that number. Now. On it. Diana's fingers flew across her keyboard. Burner phone. Destroyed seconds after the message was sent. But I can tell you where it was when the text went out. She looked up, her face grim. County jail. She sent it from holding. How is that possible? I demanded. Don't they confiscate phones when people are arrested? They do. Which means either she smuggled one in, unlikely, given the security protocols, or someone on the inside helped her. Diana's expression was calculating. I'll make some calls. Find out who's on Scarlett's payroll in the sheriff's department. This is insane, I breathed. She's in jail and she's still threatening me? She's desperate, Ethan said. Desperate people do stupid things. This text is evidence of witness intimidation. It's just going to add to her charges. But I wasn't thinking about additional charges. I was thinking about what Scarlett had said. You haven't even seen what I'm capable of. What else had she planned? What other traps had she set during her 3 months of control over Hart Industries? As if reading my mind, Victoria spoke quietly. There's something else you need to know. Something I've been investigating on my own. She pulled out one final document and placed it in front of me. 3 weeks ago, Scarlett signed a contract with Meridian Holdings. It's a complex deal involving technology patents that Hart Industries owns. The contract gives Meridian exclusive rights to those patents for the next 20 years in exchange for what looks like a reasonable licensing fee. Okay, so void the contract like you said. I can't. The contract has a poison pill clause. If Hart Industries attempts to void it or buy out Meridian's interest, we forfeit the patents entirely. They become public domain. Victoria's voice dropped. Isabella, those patents are worth approximately $300 million. They represent the next generation of our core technology. Without them, Hart Industries becomes obsolete within 2 years. The room spun. So Scarlett made it impossible for me to undo what she did without destroying the company anyway. Yes, and here's the interesting part. I can't find any information about Meridian Holdings. No corporate records, no business history, no physical address beyond a P.O. box in Delaware. It's a shell company. Victoria leaned forward. Someone funded Scarlett's sabotage. Someone with significant resources and a vendetta against Hart Industries. And whoever they are, they're not done yet. I looked around at the faces watching me. Ethan, with his guilt and his promises. Victoria, with her hard-won experience and her determination to save my father's legacy. Diana, already planning how to keep me alive through whatever was coming. And I realized, this wasn't just about saving a company or honoring my father's memory or proving I was worthy of the Hart name. This was war, and I was about to learn how to fight. When do we start? I asked Victoria. Her smile was fierce. Right now. 72 hours became a blur of spreadsheets, corporate jargon, and coffee that tasted like regret. Victoria wasn't kidding about the 18-hour days. She'd converted my father's study, after a cleaning crew removed the evidence of Scarlett's rage, into what she called a war room. Whiteboards covered every available wall space, filled with organizational charts, financial projections, and the names of people who either wanted to help me or destroy me. There were far more names in the second column. Again, Victoria said, pointing to a complicated diagram of Hart Industries' supply chain. Explain the distribution network. I rubbed my eyes, trying to focus. It was 2 a.m. on day 3. The board meeting was in 12 hours. My brain felt like soup. We have 3 primary distribution centers: Atlanta, Seattle, and Denver. They service approximately 800 retail partners across North America, with expansion plans for. Wrong. We had expansion plans. Scarlett canceled them and reallocated those funds to. She waited, expectant. To the offshore accounts, I finished tiredly. Which the FBI has frozen. Which means we can restart the expansion, but not for at least 6 months while the legal proceedings sort out the recovered funds. Good. Now tell me about the patents. I wanted to cry, or sleep, or possibly set something on fire. The patents are locked in a contract with Meridian Holdings that we can't break without forfeiting them entirely. We're still trying to identify who actually owns Meridian, but we've hit dead ends in every direction. What's your strategy in the board meeting? Acknowledge the problems, present a 5-year recovery plan, convince the opportunists that I'm their best bet for profitability, and hope the 4 board members in Scarlett's pocket don't have enough ammunition to destroy me. Victoria studied me for a long moment. You're ready. I don't feel ready. You're not supposed to feel ready. You're supposed to be ready. She closed her laptop. Get some sleep. You need to look like a CEO tomorrow, not a victim. If you've ever had to do something terrifying with zero preparation, drop a comment. Because I was about to walk into a room full of people who wanted me to fail. I made my way upstairs, my body moving on autopilot. The house was quiet. Diana's security team was outside. Victoria had finally gone to the guest house to sleep, and Ethan had been giving me space. He'd stayed close, brought me food when Victoria got too intense, made sure I took breaks. But he hadn't pushed. Hadn't tried to have the relationship talk we both knew was coming. I was grateful and resentful in equal measure. My phone buzzed as I reached my bedroom. Another unknown number. My heart rate spiked. Another threat from Scarlett. But the message was worse. Ms. Hart, this is James Sullivan. We need to talk before tomorrow's meeting. Meet me at the Riverside Cafe at 6 a.m. Come alone. This is not optional if you want to keep your company. I stared at the message for a long moment, then forwarded it to Diana and Ethan. Diana's response came first. Absolutely not. Could be a trap. We'll have teams sweep the location. Then Ethan, I'm coming with you. And finally, another message from James. I know you'll show this to your people. That's fine. But Ms. Hart comes alone, or there's no conversation. I have information about Meridian Holdings. Information you need. I typed back, I'll be there. Then I collapsed onto my bed and tried to sleep, knowing I wouldn't. Knowing that today, technically, everything would change one way or another. The Riverside Cafe was the kind of place my father used to take me for Sunday breakfast. Old-fashioned booths, waitresses who called everyone honey, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. At 6 a.m, it was nearly empty except for a few early shift workers and one man sitting in the back booth. James Sullivan looked exactly like his photo. Late 60s, silver hair, expensive suit that seemed out of place in the casual atmosphere. He watched me approach with an expression I couldn't read. Diana and her team were outside. Ethan was in a car across the street, probably losing his mind. But I walked up to that booth alone, slid into the seat across from James, and waited. You look like your mother, he said finally. I hadn't expected that. You knew her. I was at their wedding. Watched Richard fall head over heels for a woman who was too good for all of us. Something sad crossed his face. She died too young. I'm sorry about that. And I'm sorry about your father. Are you? Because Victoria told me you've been working with Scarlett to steal my inheritance. James smiled, a thin, bitter expression. Is that what Victoria said? I'm sure she believes it. She always was loyal to Richard, even when he made terrible decisions. Buying you out was a terrible decision? Trusting me was. He pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. This is everything you need to know about Meridian Holdings. Who owns it, who funded it, and why they want Hart Industries destroyed. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The first page was a corporate registration document. Meridian Holdings LLC, registered in Delaware 18 months ago. And the owner listed. My breath stopped. Owner, Richard Hart. That's impossible, I whispered. My father died 4 months ago. He couldn't have signed contracts with himself. Keep reading. I flipped through the pages. More documents, more signatures, more proof that my father had somehow created a shell company, transferred valuable patents to it, and set up the exact trap that was now threatening to destroy his own company. I don't understand. Your father was dying, James said quietly. He knew it long before he told anyone. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, diagnosed 18 months before his death. He came to me with a plan, a way to protect Hart Industries from hostile takeover attempts after he was gone. By creating a shell company and transferring assets to it. By creating a legal structure that would make Hart Industries essentially worthless to anyone who tried to steal it. The patents in Meridian Holdings? They're the crown jewels. Without them, Hart Industries is just real estate and a dying business model. James leaned forward. Richard set up a dead man's switch. If anything happened to him and Hart Industries didn't pass to you intact, the patents would be locked away for 20 years. By the time they were accessible again, they'd be obsolete. The pieces started clicking together. He knew Scarlett would try something. He knew his second wife was a gold digger and her daughter was worse. He spent the last 18 months of his life setting traps to protect you. James's expression hardened. But here's the problem. I'm the only one with the authorization codes to unlock Meridian Holdings. Your father made me the failsafe because he trusted me, despite our history. Said I was the only person who loved Hart Industries as much as he did. So why are you helping Scarlett? I'm not. He looked genuinely offended. I've been sabotaging her from the inside. Every contract she signed that seemed devastating, I made sure there were loopholes. Every asset she sold, I made sure the buyers were people we could buy back from. I've been playing the long game, waiting for you to inherit so I could give you the tools to undo everything she did. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But trust had become a luxury I couldn't afford. Prove it. James pulled out a small flash drive. This contains the authorization codes for Meridian Holdings. It also contains evidence that every board member working with Scarlett took bribes. illegal payments that will destroy their careers and open them up to criminal charges. And it contains video footage of Scarlett bragging to her mother about destroying your father's will. My hand hovered over the flash drive. Why not just give this to the FBI? Because I need something from you first. His eyes met mine, hard and determined. I want back in. I want my stake in Hart Industries restored. I want a seat at the table, a voice in the direction of the company I helped build. He paused. And I want you to promise me that you'll never sell, that you'll fight for this company the way your father did, the way your mother would have wanted. That's a lot to ask. I'm giving you everything you need to win. I'd say that's a fair trade. I thought about my father, alone and dying, setting up elaborate traps to protect me. I thought about Scarlett's rage, her desperation, her final threat from jail. I thought about 2,000 employees whose livelihoods depended on what I did in the next 6 hours. And I thought about the flash drive sitting between us, containing either my salvation or another elaborate trap. What would you do? Trust a man who admits he's been playing both sides? Or walk away and fight without his help? Let me know in the comments, because I was about to make a choice that would define everything. If I agree, I said slowly, you report directly to me. Not the board. Not Victoria. Me. You have a voice, but I have the final say. Always. Agreed. And if you betray me, if this is another game, I will destroy you. Not legally. Not financially. I will make sure everyone knows exactly who James Sullivan really is. And you'll spend the rest of your life being the man who tried to ruin Richard Hart's daughter. He smiled, genuine this time. You really are his child. Yes, Isabella. Those terms are acceptable. I took the flash drive. My phone exploded with texts the moment I stepped outside. Ethan, Diana, even Victoria somehow knowing I'd met with James. But I ignored them all, climbed into Diana's SUV, and headed back to the estate. I had 6 hours to verify everything on that drive. 6 hours to prepare for the board meeting. 6 hours to decide if I was about to win, or if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. 5 hours and 45 minutes later, I stood outside the Hart Industries boardroom wearing my mother's vintage Chanel suit that I'd found in her preserved closet, my father's watch on my wrist, and an expression I'd practiced in the mirror until it stopped showing how terrified I was. Victoria stood beside me, looking fiercer than I'd ever seen her. The files on the drive check out. James Sullivan was telling the truth. He's been sabotaging Scarlett's plans from the inside. With this evidence, we can have the hostile board members removed and potentially arrested. But, I could hear it in her voice. But bringing James back in is dangerous. He's brilliant and ruthless. If he decides you're not the leader Hart Industries needs, he could orchestrate another takeover. You'd be giving him the tools to destroy you. I know. I straightened my shoulders. But he's also the only one who truly understands what my father built. And if I'm going to save this company, I need people who actually care about it. Then let's go save your empire. Victoria opened the boardroom door. 9 faces turned toward me. Some curious. Some hostile. Some already convinced I was about to fail. I walked to the head of the table, my father's chair, empty for 3 months, and sat down. Good morning, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm Isabella Hart, and we have a lot to discuss. James Sullivan, sitting 3 seats down, gave me the smallest nod, and the war began. The boardroom felt smaller than it looked. 9 faces, 18 eyes, all weighing whether I was worth the oxygen I was breathing. Before we begin, I said, connecting my laptop to the presentation screen, I want to acknowledge the elephant in the room. 3 days ago, I didn't even know I'd be sitting in this chair. Most of you have spent the past 72 hours watching viral videos of my very public humiliation and wondering if Richard Hart's daughter is capable of running a company she knew nothing about until this week. A few uncomfortable shifts. One board member, Patricia Chun, according to Victoria's notes, one of the opportunists, leaned forward slightly. Good. I had her attention. The answer is, I don't know yet. I let that hang in the air. But here's what I do know. In 3 months, Scarlett Corleone cost this company $47 million in stolen assets, $300 million in locked patents, and immeasurable damage to our reputation and employee morale. She fired 80% of senior leadership, sold profitable subsidiaries for pennies on the dollar, and entered into contracts designed to cripple us long-term. We're aware of Ms. Corleone's indiscretions, said Marcus Webb, one of Scarlett's board allies. His tone suggested I was wasting his time. The question is whether you're equipped to fix the damage, or if we'd be better served by selling to someone who actually knows what they're doing. You're right, Marcus. I smiled pleasantly. That is the question. So let me answer it. I pulled up the first slide. This is a comprehensive recovery plan developed over the past 72 hours with Victoria Lawrence, who many of you know was my father's most trusted advisor. It addresses every major issue Scarlett created and provides a roadmap for not just recovery but growth. I clicked to the next slide, watching their faces as the numbers appeared. Within 6 months, I project we'll recover 60% of the stolen assets through the federal investigation. The remaining 40% will be offset by cost-cutting measures that don't involve mass layoffs, primarily the elimination of the bloated consultant contracts Scarlett signed with her friends. Patricia was nodding now. 2 more board members, the other opportunist and one of my father's loyalists, leaned in to study the projections. The patents, I continued, are locked in a contract with Meridian Holdings that appears unbreakable. Except Meridian Holdings was created by my father as a protection mechanism, and I now have the authorization codes to unlock it. I had their full attention now. Even Marcus looked surprised. James. I turned to him. Would you like to explain? James stood, moving to stand beside me with the confidence of someone who'd been in this room 1,000 times before. Richard Hart approached me 18 months before his death with a plan. He knew his second wife and stepdaughter would try to steal Hart Industries after he died, so he created a legal trap. The patents in Meridian Holdings were meant to be inaccessible to anyone who tried to take this company through fraud or force. You're saying Richard Hart deliberately sabotaged his own company? Marcus's face was red. That's insane. He protected it. James cut in sharply. He knew Isabella would inherit legitimately, and he made sure I had the tools to give her back everything if someone tried to steal it, which is exactly what happened. I pulled up another slide, the one that would either save me or destroy me. This is documentation showing that 4 members of this board accepted payments from Scarlett Corleone in exchange for supporting her takeover attempt. Payments that constitute bribery and breach of fiduciary duty. The room erupted. Marcus shot to his feet. This is slander. I'll have my lawyers. Your lawyers will be busy defending you against federal charges. Diana Friedman appeared in the doorway, her FBI credentials clearly visible. Marcus Webb, Laura Simmons, David Katz, and Jonathan Pierce. You're all being formally investigated for corporate bribery and fraud. I suggest you retain counsel and refrain from speaking further. 3 of the 4 board members, Laura, David, and Jonathan, went pale and silent. Marcus sputtered, threatened, and finally stormed out of the room with Diana's agents following close behind. That left 5 board members. 3 loyalists, 2 opportunists, and me. Anyone else want to leave? I asked pleasantly. Silence. Good. Then let's talk about the future of Hart Industries. I pulled up my final slide. I'm not my father. I don't have his 40 years of experience or his instincts or his relationships. What I have is a degree in design, a stubborn refusal to let Scarlett Corleone win, and a team of people who actually give a damn about this company. I looked at each remaining board member in turn. I'm asking for 1 year. 1 year to prove I can do this. In that year, I'll recover the stolen assets, unlock the patents, rebuild our leadership team, and return Hart Industries to profitability. If I fail, I'll step down voluntarily and we'll find someone better suited to lead. And if you succeed? Patricia asked. Then we build something even better than what my father created. We innovate. We expand. We become the company he always dreamed we could be. I paused. But I can't do it without this board's support. I need a vote of confidence. Right now. Patricia exchanged glances with Thomas Rodriguez, the other opportunist. Some silent communication passed between them. I move that we grant Isabella Hart provisional leadership of Hart Industries for a period of 1 year, with quarterly reviews to assess progress. Patricia's voice was firm. All in favor? 5 hands went up. The 3 loyalists without hesitation. Patricia and Thomas after a moment's consideration. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Thank you. I won't waste this chance. See that you don't, Thomas said, but he was almost smiling. Your father was a pain in the ass, but he was brilliant. Let's see if you inherited that too. As the board members filed out, James lingered behind. That was well done. Your father would be proud. Was any of it true? I asked quietly. Did he really set all this up to protect me? Every word. James's expression softened. Richard Hart spent the last 18 months of his life making sure you'd survive whatever Scarlett threw at you. He believed in you, Isabella. Even when you didn't believe in yourself. Something in my chest cracked open. Grief and gratitude and overwhelming responsibility all tangled together. I need you to be honest with me, I said. Can I actually do this? Can I save Hart Industries? James studied me for a long moment. Ask me again in a year. Then he left me alone in my father's boardroom, sitting in my father's chair, wearing my mother's suit, and wondering what the hell I'd just signed up for. I found Ethan in the parking garage, leaning against his car like he'd been waiting hours. Maybe he had. How'd it go? He asked. I won. Barely. I leaned against the car beside him, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. 1 year to prove myself, or I lose everything. You won't lose. I know you. Do you? I turned to face him, because I'm not sure I know myself anymore. 3 days ago, I was a freelance designer barely making rent. Now I'm a CEO with 2,000 employees depending on me, a stepsister in jail who wants me dead, and a fiancé who... I stopped, the word catching in my throat. Who loves you? Ethan finished quietly. Who made mistakes and is trying to make them right. Who will wait as long as it takes for you to trust me again. I looked at him, really looked at him. At the exhaustion in his eyes that matched mine. At the way he held himself carefully apart, respecting the boundaries I'd drawn. At the man who'd landed a jet on my enemy's lawn to save me from my darkest moment. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. How to run a company and process my father's death and figure out who I am now and be with you when I'm still so angry about the lies. Then don't. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel his warmth. Don't figure it all out right now. Just take it one day at a time, like we agreed. Today, you won your first battle. Tomorrow, you'll win another. And somewhere along the way, maybe you'll decide you can forgive me. And if I can't, then I'll still make sure you have everything you need to succeed. Because that's what you do for the people you love. His hand came up slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, he tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. You're going to be an incredible CEO, Isabella Hart. With or without me. If your heart just melted a little, hit that like button. Because I was about 3 seconds from forgetting why I was mad at him. ***. But before I could respond, before I could decide whether to kiss him or push him away or just collapse into his arms, my phone rang. Unknown number. My stomach dropped. Not again. Not another threat from Scarlett. But when I answered, the voice wasn't Scarlett's. Isabella Hart. A woman's voice, professional and cold. This is Margaret Ashford. I'm an attorney representing Meridian Holdings. Meridian was my father's company. There is no attorney. There is now. Your father's dead man's switch was designed to protect Hart Industries from external threats. It was not designed to protect it from family members who might contest the will. I'm calling to inform you that Elena Corleone, Scarlett's mother and your late father's widow, has filed a lawsuit claiming that Richard Hart's will was written under duress, and that as his surviving spouse, she's entitled to 50% of his estate. The parking garage tilted. That's insane. They were married for 15 years, but the prenup contained a sunset clause. After 15 years of marriage, it became void. If Elena's lawsuit succeeds, she'll own half of everything, including Hart Industries, which means the patents in Meridian Holdings become contested assets, and the dead man's switch activates. Meaning the patents become locked for 20 years, as your father intended. Hart Industries becomes worthless, and you lose everything all over again. The phone slipped from my numb fingers. Ethan caught it, listened for a moment, his expression growing darker with each word. Then he hung up and pulled me against his chest. We'll fight this, he said fiercely. We'll fight Elena and her lawyers and whoever else comes after you. But I wasn't listening. I was thinking about Scarlett's text from jail. You haven't even seen what I'm capable of. She'd known her mother would file the lawsuit, known that even from behind bars, she could still destroy me. And I realized with sickening clarity, this war was far from over. It was just beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my father's study, my study now technically, surrounded by legal documents that Victoria had couriered over within an hour of Elena's lawyer's call. Each page was a new nightmare wrapped in legal terminology I barely understood. The sunset clause was standard in prenups from that era, Victoria explained, her voice tinny over speakerphone at 3 in the morning. After 15 years, the protective provisions expire. It was meant to reward long marriages, prove that the union wasn't just about money. They were married for exactly 15 years and 2 months when Dad died. I stared at the prenup, at my father's signature from a lifetime ago. That can't be coincidence. It's not. Elena Corleone is many things, but patient is at the top of the list. Victoria's sigh crackled through the speaker. She waited for the prenup to expire, waited for your father to get sick, and then she and Scarlett executed their plan. But Dad changed his will 3 weeks before he died. He knew something was wrong. He knew, but he didn't know about the sunset clause, or he forgot about it in the chaos of his diagnosis. His lawyers should have caught it, but she trailed off. It doesn't matter now. What matters is that Elena has a legitimate legal claim to 50% of your father's estate. I wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to find Elena Corleone and Isabella. Ethan's voice cut through my spiral. He'd been sitting quietly in the corner for the past hour, just being present while I processed. Breathe. I realized I'd been holding my breath, my chest tight with rage and fear. If Elena wins, I said carefully, the patent's lock. Hart Industries becomes worthless. 2,000 people lose their jobs. And Scarlett wins from behind bars. Yes, Victoria confirmed. Unless we can prove Elena doesn't deserve the inheritance. Prove she was complicit in Scarlett's fraud, or that the marriage was a sham, or that she somehow forfeited her rights. How do we prove any of that? We dig. We investigate. We find something Elena doesn't want found. Victoria paused. I'm already making calls. But Isabella, this kind of legal battle takes months, sometimes years. And the board isn't going to wait patiently while you fight a custody battle over the company they're supposed to be running. So I have to save Hart Industries and fight Elena simultaneously. Welcome to being a CEO, Victoria said without sympathy. It only gets harder from here. She hung up. I sat there in the pre-dawn darkness, surrounded by the ghosts of my father's choices, and tried to figure out how I was supposed to win a war on 2 fronts. Talk to me, Ethan said quietly. Tell me what you're thinking. I'm thinking my father was an idiot. The words came out harsh, bitter. He set up all these elaborate protections, but he missed the most obvious threat. His own wife. He was dying. He wasn't thinking clearly. He was thinking clearly enough to create Meridian Holdings and approach you and plan for every possible scenario except the one that's actually happening. I stood, pacing the room like a caged animal. And now I'm supposed to fix his mistakes while running a company I barely understand and trusting people who've already lied to me. Ethan flinched. Isabella, I'm not talking about just you. I gestured wildly at the documents. James Sullivan, who claims he was sabotaging Scarlett, but somehow let $47 million disappear. Victoria, who was my father's CFO, but didn't notice the prenup problem. Diana, who's supposed to keep me safe but couldn't stop Scarlett from sending threatening messages from jail. I stopped facing him. Everyone around me has an agenda. Everyone wants something. And I'm supposed to just trust that they have my best interests at heart. You don't have to trust anyone, Ethan said, standing. You just have to decide who's useful, who can help you win. Trust can come later, after you've secured your position. The cynicism in his voice shocked me. Is that how you operate? Use people until they're no longer useful. It's how I've survived in my family's business for 15 years. His eyes were hard. It's how your father built Hart Industries from nothing. And it's how you're going to have to operate if you want to keep it. I stared at him, seeing a version of Ethan I'd never encountered before. Not the bookstore employee who'd recommended cozy mysteries. Not even the billionaire who'd landed a jet to save me. This was the CEO, the businessman, the person who made difficult decisions without flinching. I don't want to be that person, I whispered. Then you'll lose. He stepped closer, his voice softening slightly. I'm not saying you have to become ruthless or cruel, but you need to be strategic. You need to think 10 steps ahead. You need to be willing to make sacrifices. What kind of sacrifices? Before he could answer, my phone rang. Again. I was starting to hate that sound. This time it was James Sullivan. Turn on the news, he said without preamble. Channel 7. Now. I grabbed the remote, switching on the television mounted above my father's bookshelves. The morning news was just starting, and the lead story made my blood run cold. Breaking news. Hart Industries under investigation for tax fraud. What the hell? I breathed. The anchor's voice filled the study. Federal investigators have launched a probe into Hart Industries following anonymous tips about unreported income and offshore accounts. The investigation focuses on transactions made during the tenure of former acting CEO Scarlett Corleone. But sources say the probe could expand to include current CEO Isabella Hart if evidence suggests she was aware of the alleged fraud. Scarlett, I said flatly. This is Scarlett. Worse, James said over the phone. This is Elena. She's trying to tank the company's value before the estate settlement. If Hart Industries is under federal investigation, its worth plummets. Which means her 50% is worth less, but so is your 50%. She's willing to burn everything down to hurt you. I sank back into my father's chair, the weight of it all crushing down on my chest. A lawsuit, a federal investigation, a company hemorrhaging money and credibility, a board that barely trusted me, a fiancé I wasn't sure I could believe, and a step-family that wanted me destroyed. What do I do? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. You fight, James said firmly. You call an emergency press conference, you get ahead of this story, and you show the world that Isabella Hart is not someone to mess with. I don't know how to do a press conference. Then you learn. Fast. His voice was hard. Your father's memorial is tomorrow. Every major business publication will be there, every competitor, every person who's waiting to see if you crumble. You use that stage. You tell your father's story, Hart Industries' story, and your story. You make them see you as the victim fighting back, not the incompetent heiress who inherited a mess. My father's memorial. I'd been so consumed with the board meeting and Elena's lawsuit that I'd almost forgotten. Tomorrow, I would have to stand in front of hundreds of people and eulogize a man I was still angry at for dying, for leaving me unprepared, for trusting the wrong people. I can't do this, I whispered. Ethan's hand found my shoulder. Yes, you can. No, I really can't. I'm not strong enough, smart enough. Stop. He spun my chair around, forcing me to look at him. 3 days ago, you walked into your stepsister's wedding knowing you'd be humiliated. You did it anyway, because you wanted to honor your father's memory. That took courage, Isabella. Real courage. And you're going to need that same courage now. That was different. That was just social suicide. This is the same thing on a bigger scale. You're walking into a situation where people want you to fail, and you're going to prove them wrong. His hands cupped my face, green eyes intense. I know you're scared. I know you feel overwhelmed. But you're Richard Hart's daughter. You inherited more than just his company. You inherited his determination, his intelligence, his ability to see solutions where everyone else sees problems. You don't know that. I do know that, because I've watched you for 3 years. Watched you build a freelance business from nothing. Watched you take care of your father through his illness while managing your own grief. Watched you survive 3 months of poverty and humiliation without breaking. He smiled slightly. You're stronger than you think, Isabella Hart. You just haven't been pushed hard enough to see it. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe I was capable of winning this impossible war. But belief felt like a luxury when the entire world was burning down around me. Ethan, I said quietly, if I do this, if I fight Elena and clear the company's name and somehow save Hart Industries, what happens to us? His expression shifted. What do you mean? I mean you're a billionaire CEO with your own empire to run. I'm about to become a CEO who'll be working 20-hour days for the foreseeable future. When do we have time for a relationship? When do we figure out if we can trust each other again? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, we make time. We prioritize it. Because Isabella, I didn't fall in love with you thinking it would be easy. I fell in love with you because being with you made me want to be a better person. And if supporting you through this crisis means putting my own company on autopilot for a while, that's what I'll do. You can't do that. Watch me. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then showed me the screen. It was an email to his executive team, taking personal leave effective immediately. All major decisions to be approved by board until further notice. Emergency contact only. Ethan, no. Your company will survive without me for a few months. Blake Enterprises has been running for 3 generations. It'll be fine. He pocketed his phone. You, on the other hand, are fighting a battle that could destroy you. And I'm not letting you fight it alone. Something in my chest cracked open, a fissure in the wall I'd built between us. Why? I whispered. Why would you sacrifice your company for me? Because I love you, and because your father trusted me with the most important thing in his life, keeping his daughter safe. I'm not breaking that promise. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine. Let me help you, Isabella. Please. I closed my eyes, breathing in his scent, expensive cologne mixed with coffee and something uniquely him. For the first time in 3 days, I let myself lean into him. Let myself be vulnerable. Okay, I breathed. Okay, help me figure out how to survive tomorrow. His arms came around me, solid and warm and safe. And for just a moment, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I could actually do this. The morning of my father's memorial dawned gray and cold, matching my mood perfectly. I stood in front of my mother's full-length mirror, wearing a black Armani dress that Victoria had insisted I buy for the occasion. My hair was pulled back in a severe bun. My makeup was perfect, courtesy of a stylist Ethan had hired. I looked like a CEO. I felt like a fraud. You ready? Victoria appeared in the doorway, wearing her own armor of designer black. No. I adjusted my mother's pearl necklace. Another piece of armor, another connection to the past. But I'm doing it anyway. Good. Because there are approximately 300 people downstairs waiting to see if Richard Hart's daughter can fill his shoes. She paused. The press is already calling this the memorial that will decide Hart Industries' future. No pressure. If you've ever had to perform under impossible pressure, drop a comment. Because I was about to find out if I could handle it. We descended the grand staircase together. The main floor of the estate had been transformed into a memorial space. Rows of chairs facing a small stage, photos of my father's life displayed on easels, flowers everywhere. And people. So many people. I recognized faces from the board meeting. Competitors who'd been circling like sharks. Journalists with cameras and recording devices. Employees who'd lost their jobs under Scarlett's reign. And in the back, wearing an expression of calculated sympathy, Elena Corleone, my stepmother, the woman suing me for half of everything. Standing in my father's house, at my father's memorial, like she had every right to be here. Our eyes met across the crowded room. She smiled, poisonous and sweet. Ignore her, Victoria murmured. Focus on what you came here to do. But I couldn't ignore her. Couldn't ignore the way she was working the room, shaking hands, accepting condolences like the grieving widow, playing her part perfectly while she destroyed everything my father built. James Sullivan materialized at my elbow. The press is asking for a statement before the memorial begins. Something about the investigation. Tell them. No. Ethan's voice, firm and commanding. He'd been coordinating with Diana's security team, but now he was at my side, protective and solid. You don't respond to ambush questions. You control the narrative. How? He handed me a folded piece of paper. I wrote something. You don't have to use it. But if you want to get ahead of Elena's attack, this is how. I unfolded the paper, reading quickly. It was good, strong, defiant, exactly the tone I needed. But it was also aggressive. Confrontational. Once I said these words, there was no going back. If I do this, I said quietly, Elena will come after me even harder. She's already coming after you as hard as she can, Ethan pointed out. Might as well fight back. I looked at the paper again, at the words that would either save me or bury me. Then I looked at my father's portrait, displayed prominently near the stage. His eyes seemed to meet mine across the distance, and I could almost hear his voice. Asterisk, be brave, Isabella. Be bold. Be ruthless when you need to be. Asterisk. I made my decision. Get me a microphone, I told James. I'm making a statement. 5 minutes later, I stood on the small stage, facing 300 expectant faces and a dozen cameras. My hands were shaking, but I gripped the microphone hard enough to hide it. Thank you all for coming to honor my father's memory, I began, my voice carrying across the silent room. Richard Hart was a brilliant businessman, a devoted father, and a man who believed that integrity was worth more than profit. I paused, letting that sink in, which is why I'm standing here today to address the allegations against Hart Industries directly. Yes, there is a federal investigation into tax fraud and unreported income. And yes, those crimes were committed, but not by me and not by my father. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elena's expression hardened. Scarlett Corleone, my stepsister, systematically looted Hart Industries during her 3 months of illegal control. She stole $47 million. She destroyed legal documents. She bribed board members and sold company assets to enrich herself. And now, from jail, she and her mother are trying to destroy what's left so that no one else can have it. The murmurs grew louder. Cameras flashed. Elena Corleone is suing for 50% of my father's estate, despite the fact that her daughter committed fraud to steal 100%. She's feeding information to federal investigators to damage the company's value before the settlement. She's using my father's memorial, his memorial, as an opportunity to play the grieving widow while plotting his legacy's destruction. Elena stood abruptly, her face flushed with rage. But I wasn't done. So let me be very clear. I will not let this stand. I will fight Elena Corleone's lawsuit with every resource I have. I will cooperate fully with federal investigators to prove that Hart Industries under my leadership is clean. And I will rebuild what Scarlett destroyed, no matter how long it takes or how many enemies I make along the way. I locked eyes with Elena across the room. My father taught me that integrity matters, that protecting the people who depend on you matters, that standing up to bullies, no matter how powerful they are, matters. I paused. So to everyone watching and wondering if Isabella Hart can fill her father's shoes, you're about to find out. I set down the microphone and walked off the stage. The room erupted. People shouting questions, cameras flashing, Elena screaming something about slander. But I just kept walking, Victoria and Ethan flanking me, Diana's security team clearing a path. We made it to my father's study, my refuge, and I finally let myself breathe. That, Victoria said slowly, was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. Which one? I asked shakily. She grinned. I'll let you know after we see Elena's response. We didn't have to wait long. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Elena Corleone files emergency injunction to remove Isabella Hart as CEO, citing erratic behavior and gross incompetence. Well, I said, reading the headline. I guess we know which one it was. Ethan pulled me against his side. You were magnificent. I just started a war I might not be able to win. No. He turned me to face him, his expression fierce and proud. You just showed Elena Corleone that you're not the scared girl she thought you were. You're a fighter. And fighters don't back down. I looked at the 3 people in the room, Ethan, Victoria, James, who'd followed us in. My unlikely army. Okay, I said, straightening my shoulders. Elena wants a war? Let's give her one. And somewhere, I swear I could feel my father smiling. The emergency injunction hearing was scheduled for 48 hours after my father's memorial. But Diana's investigation moved faster than Elena's lawyers anticipated. We found something, Diana said, bursting into my study at dawn. Her eyes were bright with the kind of satisfaction that came from uncovering secrets people killed to keep hidden. Something big. I looked up from the financial reports I'd been reviewing. My 3rd all-nighter in a row. Ethan was asleep on the couch. Victoria had finally gone home an hour ago, and I was running on spite and coffee. Tell me. Diana pulled out her laptop, her fingers flying across the keys. Elena's first husband, Thomas Ashford? The boating accident wasn't an accident. I found a witness, a marina employee who saw Elena arguing with him hours before he died. And get this, she'd taken out a massive life insurance policy on him 2 weeks earlier. My pulse quickened. Can you prove it? Better. I found the insurance broker who sold her the policy. He's willing to testify that Elena specifically asked about accident coverage and payout timelines. Diana pulled up another file. And her second husband, David Moretti? The heart attack that killed him? The autopsy showed elevated levels of digitalis, a heart medication he wasn't prescribed. But Elena was prescribed it for a heart condition she claimed to have. Claimed. There's no medical record of any heart condition. She got the prescription from a doctor who's now under investigation for writing fraudulent prescriptions for cash. Diana's smile was predatory. Isabella, Elena Corleone is a serial killer. And we can prove it. The study door opened. Ethan stood there, rumpled from sleep but instantly alert. Prove what? That my stepmother is a murderer, I said, the words feeling surreal even as I spoke them. And that my father would have been next if cancer hadn't gotten him first. Ethan crossed the room in 3 strides. Have you taken this to the police? Better, Diana said. I took it to the FBI. They're reopening both death investigations and adding them to Elena's file. And here's the beautiful part. Witness intimidation, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder? Those are federal charges. Which means Elena's lawsuit becomes irrelevant the moment she's arrested. When? I asked. Diana checked her watch. About 2 hours ago. FBI picked her up at her hotel. She's in federal custody as we speak. The relief that washed over me was so intense I had to sit down. It's over. Not quite, Victoria's voice came from the doorway. She looked as exhausted as I felt, but there was fire in her eyes. Scarlett made bail. The relief evaporated. What? How? Anonymous donor posted her bond. $2 million cash. Victoria stepped into the room. She was released from County General this morning. And Isabella? She's disappeared. Ethan's hand found mine, squeezing tight. Diana, tell me you have eyes on her. I'm trying. But she's not at any of her known addresses, not using her credit cards, not. Diana's phone buzzed. She looked at it, and her face went pale. She's here. Here where? I demanded. Here. The estate. Security just flagged movement in the East Wing. My father's study. The room Scarlett had destroyed in rage. Everyone stay calm, Diana said, already on her radio calling for backup. Ms. Hart, I need you to stay in this room with Ethan while my team secures. But I was already moving, driven by something primal and furious. 3 months of fear, humiliation, and rage propelling me toward the woman who'd tried to steal everything. Isabella, wait. Ethan called, but I didn't stop. I ran through the halls of my childhood home, my bare feet silent on the marble floors. Behind me, I could hear Ethan and Diana following, but I didn't slow down. The door to my father's study stood open. Scarlett stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by the restoration work we'd started. She looked terrible, gaunt pale, with dark circles under her eyes and her hands shaking. But when she saw me, she smiled. Hello, little sister. You're trespassing, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Diana, call the police. I wouldn't. Scarlett held up her hand, and I saw it, a small device with a red button. This is connected to 6 incendiary devices I've placed throughout the house. Your father's study, your bedroom, the kitchen, the ballroom, the library, and, oh, this is my favorite, your mother's rose garden. My blood ran cold. You're bluffing. Am I? She pressed the button slightly, not enough to trigger it, but enough to make her point. I've lost everything, Isabella. My mother's going to prison. My husband annulled our marriage. My reputation is destroyed. I have nothing left to lose. So you're going to burn down my house? I stepped closer, ignoring Ethan's warning hand on my arm. That's your master plan? Destroy what you couldn't steal. I'm going to give you a choice. Scarlett's eyes glittered with madness. You can let me walk out of here with $10 million, a small fraction of what should have been mine, or I can burn this house to the ground with everyone in it. You won't do it. You're not a murderer. No. I poisoned myself in jail to frame you. You think I won't burn down a house? She laughed, the sound brittle and unhinged. I've spent 20 years watching you get everything I deserved. Your father's love, his company, his legacy. All because you were born first to the right mother. That's what this is about. Understanding crashed over me. You're jealous. Jealous. Scarlett's voice rose to a shriek. I watched Richard Hart give you everything while treating me like an inconvenience. My mother and I played the perfect family for 16 years. And for what? So he could write a will leaving me nothing. He left you nothing because you were planning to steal it. I shot back. He knew, Scarlett. He knew what you and Elena were planning, and he protected me from you. Something shifted in her expression, grief mixing with rage. He should have loved me. I tried so hard to make him love me. And suddenly I saw it. Not the monster who destroyed my life, but the broken girl underneath. The stepdaughter who'd spent years trying to earn love from a man who would never see her as his real daughter. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it explained it. Scarlett, I said quietly, carefully, put down the device. You don't want to do this. Yes, I do. Because if I can't have the Hart legacy, neither can you. Then do it, I said, calling her bluff. Press the button. Burn it all down. But you'll go to prison for arson and attempted murder on top of everything else. And I'll still be alive to rebuild. Her hand trembled on the device. Or, I continued, softer now, you can put it down. Turn yourself in. Cooperate with the investigation into Elena. Maybe, you can salvage some kind of life after this. You'd help me? After everything I did? No. I'd watch you face justice for what you did. But I wouldn't watch you throw your life away on a revenge that won't change anything. I held out my hand. Give me the device, Scarlet. For a long moment we stood there. Two sisters who'd never been sisters, connected by tragedy and hatred, and the complicated ghost of the man who'd failed us both in different ways. Then Scarlet's hand lowered. Diana moved fast, grabbing the device and securing Scarlet before she could change her mind. The bomb squad would later confirm the devices were real. Scarlet hadn't been bluffing. But something in her had broken at the last moment. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was seeing that I'd won no matter what she did. Or maybe, for just a second, she'd remembered that we'd once been family. 3 months later, I stood in front of the Hart Industries board, now expanded to 11 members after we'd removed Elena's conspirators and added new voices, and presented our quarterly results. Revenue is up 18%. We've recovered $42 million of the stolen assets. The patents are unlocked and generating significant licensing income. Employee satisfaction is at a 5-year high. I smiled. And our stock price is up 32% from when I took over. The board erupted in applause. Even the opportunists looked impressed. Ms. Hart, Patricia Chin said, standing. On behalf of this board, I move that we remove the provisional status from your leadership and officially name you permanent CEO of Hart Industries. Seconded, Thomas Rodriguez said. 9 hands went up. Unanimous. I let myself breathe. Thank you. I won't let you down. After the meeting, I found Ethan waiting in my office. The one I'd redesigned with the help of a feng shui consultant and my own design sensibilities. It looked nothing like my father's office. It looked like mine. How does it feel? He asked, pulling me into his arms. Terrifying. Exhilarating. Right. I looked up at him. Ethan, I've been thinking. Dangerous words. I pulled out the ring box, his grandmother's ring that I'd kept in my desk drawer for 3 months. Ask me again. His eyes widened. Isabella. Ask me. He took the box, dropped to one knee right there in my office, and opened it. Isabella Hart, will you marry me? Not because your father wanted me to protect you. Not because you need saving. But because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life watching you be extraordinary. Yes, I said, letting him slide the ring onto my finger where it belonged. But I'm keeping my name. Hart Industries needs a heart at the helm. I wouldn't have it any other way. We kissed, and through my office window, I could see the future I was building. Not the one my father had planned, not the one Scarlet had tried to destroy, but mine. Elena was serving 25 to life for 2 murders. Scarlet had pleaded guilty to fraud and attempted arson, earning herself 15 years. Theodore Winchester had written a tell-all book about his brief marriage to a criminal. It was surprisingly sympathetic to me. And I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Ready to go home? Ethan asked. I looked around my office one more time. At the quarterly reports showing Hart Industries' resurrection, at the photo of my father on my desk, at the future I'd fought for and won. Yes, I said, taking his hand. Let's go home. The end. If you love this story, please subscribe and drop a comment letting me know your favorite moment. Your support means everything.